The Teen Phantom Part 17 in audio. Grandpa insists I have you listen to Jean, Jake, and Frank. How is that possible? It is a secret that I do not know anything about. I understand that they can plant a bug on any that they choose without them knowing about it. Mello pushes some keys on the left keyboard, and it begins. Frank, you can lick your wounds. You can grumble about the government and smoke pot, you can drink yourself to death and curse God, but if you have any part in hurting that little girl, you will wish your mother had had a miscarriage or even an abortion and you had never been born. Is that a threat, Jake? No, it is just the plain fact of life. You had better do some serious thinking for the first time in your life. When we get back home, I am cleaning up my act. You can have all the stash of drugs I am getting out. I am going to get me a decent, respectable job. I am turning my life around. I am finished living the life of the losers. Oh hell, he has literally tweaked out, hasn't he, Jean? No, not at all. Jake speaks for me as well. It is not the first time I have considered turning my life around. It is all yours, Frank. We have heard more wisdom out of that little girl's mouth than you will ever muster up in your entire lifetime. She has more guts and decency than all three of us put together. Hellfire, I don't believe my ears. You have completely lost your marbles and you can't just dump me like this. We are not dumping you, we are giving it all to you. We just want out. Don't worry, you will find some good old losers to team up with. You will never miss us. It is quiet. Is it finished, Mello? No, evidently Frank is doing some serious thinking. Maybe you boys are right. Maybe I should find some character who will buy that stash and we will divide the take. It would be nice to live a decent, respectable life for once. Why were you so bent out of shape over that sweet little girl on the trail? Why were you so insulting to her? Sweet little girl, she really has you under her spell, doesn't she, Jean? Frank, you know better than that. She is as kind and decent a kid as you could find in the whole world. She was not sassy as you accused her. She is just honest and straightforward. She told you nothing more than the facts and truth. I can't really say that I dislike the brat. In fact, she is sort of cute. The thing that really was upsetting is that big sister of hers. Did you notice that big grin on her face? It was as if she was watching a comedy show or clowns in a circus. Yes, I did. I think the reason is she knew that if you laid a hand on that little sister of hers, her little sister would have ripped you apart limb by limb before you knew what was happening. You really think so? There is one thing I know, that big brother of hers looked as if he would like to get his hands on you and strangle you to death. He was very upset with the hard time you were giving the little girl. But it looked as if the little brat was running the whole show. That was one of the reasons I thought she might be the kid in Denver. I even thought she might be the Phantom Kid. Of course, like everyone else, I have thought that the Phantom Kid was a boy. I realized she had the guts to write it herself. I was really just trying to irritate the brat. I was just having a little fun. She is probably right. Those little Irish girls may be a lot alike. And she is probably right about my family. Kate is really a sweet lady. It would devastate me if I were to lose her. Ted really is a sweet kid too. I realize have not been much of a father to him though. Mello pushes some keys and it is silent again. Mello, I would like to be with you forever. I have many things I need to do before Wednesday though. I am sure your days will be busy also. With that, Charlotte managed to rise from her chair and walks to Mello. She then finds herself engulfed in his arms. She soaks in his love and comfort for a little while. Mello lays her head back on his arm so he can look into her face. I feel very close to you. I appreciate very much being with you, but you must make time for Jane. She really needs you, Mello. Mello's eyes are misty. I know she does, Charlotte. I will make time for her. This is becoming much more difficult than I expected. Mello looks at Charlotte with that serious look. Do you think I will ever understand you, Charlotte? I doubt it, and if you do, I will cease to be interesting anymore. I doubt that very much. I will love you however you are. You are not just interesting, you are very lovable too. You are too, though you are much larger than little Teddy. You are more like Jane or Nikki. I feel very close to them too. You are teaching me some very important things, Charlotte. I am pleased to know, it is mutual. When we do not learn from others we are secluded from life, and that is a morbid condition. Mello looks down at Charlotte with a pleased look. I have not heard it like that before. Those things are what intrigue me about you. I understand why Jane has a problem being your big sister. Oh, she told you about that? Yes, but she spoke with discretion. She wants very much to be loyal to you. Her respect for you is much more than that of a little sister. It is not as if you were the typical little sister, you know. It would be difficult for me to think of you as my little sister too. It would. Yes, it certainly would, Mello says as he snuggles Charlotte in his arms. Then he gives her that special soft kiss on her cheek. I should start for home. I have a very full schedule for today. Yes, Jane and I do too. They are soon in the buggy headed down the trail. Charlotte, the vanity speech, is it a secret you would rather I never knew about? It really is no problem if you rather I didn't know about it. I would like for you to know I had 2 folders and only gave you one. This morning when I retrieved the file with the speech I wanted you to make, I also pulled the one on the vanity speech. I thought to let you in on the history of my earlier life. After the little episode about the way I dressed this morning, I decided against it. I was very concerned about you thinking I was trying to impress you with my dress. That nearly terrified me, but I am relaxed about it now. I realize you are a very understanding person. You are probably more like great-grandpa than you even realize. Mello is very serious. Charlotte can see deep emotion in his face and eyes. Very softly he says with tears in his eyes, your intimate innocence, sincerity brings me to tears. I would really like you to know about it. I think you would enjoy watching the movies sometime. My father captured much of my younger life on DVDs. Beth has told me a few things in the past years. Jane told me some about it, just lately. She says she actually raised me from birth to 3 years old with Beth's help and education. You have possibly seen his and hers on bath towels? Well, that was Jane and I. When I turned 3, I was his and Jane was hers. We did not see much of each other. Our parents were not divorced, they just lived separate lives. Jane was the only one that took care of me until I was 3 years old. As far as I know, there are movies of her teaching me to read and count. From what they show, she never ever pushed at me to learn. I bugged her, begging her to read to me and let me explore different books. I wanted to know everything she could tell me. From the movies I must have been a real pesky little brat. Then at the age of 3, my father directed my life as an only child. He prepared me as if he were preparing his lunch in his lunch bucket, toting me along wherever he went. At the age of 4, he set me up with a little desk and my own computer in my room and one in his secret lab. The one in my room was not in view unless I was using it. My little desk and computer came out of the wall when I pressed the code in on my cell phone. When my desk was out, my door automatically locked so it could all remain a secret. The first thing he let me know was that no one was to know about his secret lab. When he first set me up with my computer, he only showed me how to turn it on and to log off or shut it down. He just turned me loose to my own curiosity for a couple of days. Then he began to show me some fascinating things I could do with the fantastic contraption. I have looked back wondering how he could be at ease with my online access. Evidently he knew me very well, and he knew I would not be interested in the trash. The first time he took me hiking was at the age of 4. He even made a movie of that. Of course he did not do it himself. He would have Beth, our cook and housekeeper, or Barney, our gardener and handyman, to operate the cameras so he could be in all of the movies. That first day I asked him if I could have a camera. I wanted to take pictures of all the interesting things. Later in life Beth told me he gave me a camera the next day. I didn't know how Jane or our mother spent their time. I was so busy with my fantastic life I never thought about them until my mother wanted to start the school. She had received her inheritance. That was the crucial turning point in time. Our family started to have more contact, snide remarks, unpleasant words, and chaos in general. Now I have a feeling that the school was not my mother's idea. I think that it was my father's idea. My mother's education is scanty, my father is a certified teacher. It is strange to me now, how could they have acquired that huge layout? For the kind of school my mother wanted, a large dwelling would have served her purpose best. Anyway, my father had to turn some conference rooms into classrooms to appease my mother. My mother didn't want Jane and me rubbing shoulders, so my father set me up in one of the rooms meant to serve as living quarters, for 4 students and their offices. I had another computer. My mother nearly declared an all-out war over it. It was something new for her to face. She had no knowledge of the other 2 computers I had been accustomed to since I was 4 years old. She would not have a thing to do with computers. Evidently she thought they were as evil as witchcraft itself. I lived in the room also. It had a nice little kitchen and bathroom. I slept there sometimes. Most of the time, my father and I would go home. My father ended up putting a couple little desks in my room. As the other 3 offices would not accommodate all the students, my father wanted me to help. Of course none of them had their personal computers, they had to share the ones in the other 3 offices. My mother was furious about me having students, as she called it. I did not consider them my students, they were just some kids that I could help. My mother did not make much of a scene as my father let her have her way about everything else, and Jane was at her service like a dedicated little slave, happily hopping to her little tunes. Many times I was tempted to get together with Jane behind our mother's back, but that would give Jane a lot more problems, so to please my mother and for Jane's sake I kept my distance. Charlotte thinks of what she is going to tell Mello and she begins to giggle. What is so funny? Flint the hard-nosed weasel, it was just our name for him. We usually just spoke of him as Hard-Nose. His name was Flint B. Weasel. Lula Bell called him Flintstone sometimes. And who might that be? He was the pastor before Darren Leon Franks. You were that rude to your pastor? No, it was just our secret name backstage. I truly liked it since it fit him. It was Lula Bell that came up with the idea. Don't you feel a little guilty? A little, maybe, sort of like when Paul called the high priest a whitened wall in the Bible, you remember, don't you? Yes, I do. You have an answer for everything, don't you? What an explanation, you should be ashamed of yourself. Not really, it was very wrong and mean what the hard-nosed weasel did, but in one way I really do not hold it against him. He was just ignorant about real life. He was a dogmatic to the letter character, that is, to his idea of the letter. Anyway, it was 2 years after the school opened. I was 8 years old. It was Lula Bell Daisy, one of the older girls, and in my opinion she should not have enrolled in our school. It is because of her ethics and goals. She instigated the whole thing. I liked her. She just had her priorities misplaced. She could not keep her mind off boys and she thought of them in all the wrong ways. She had high respect for me and she thought she was just trying to help me. She thought I could pull it off. She kept bugging me about how she could fix me up to look beautiful with her makeup she was not supposed to have on the premises of the school. This particular day, as soon as school was out, there was a light tap on the door, and when I opened the door, Lula Bell comes barging into the room with her makeup kit. I no more than get the door closed and she grabs my hand and she tugs me into my bathroom and starts to perform her makeup job on me.